Hey folks, I'm JC from One Shot Adventures, and today I'm going to review The Necropolis, an introductory Call of Cthulhu horror adventure that you can find in its Gateways to Terror supplement. The Necropolis traps the players deep in a cursed Egyptian tomb, and unless they work together, they're going to die a horrible death from an ancient curse. Now, as I've said before, I think Call of Cthulhu has some of the best, most wonderful introductory adventures of any RPG system. There's constant debates among the fans about which one is the greatest, and the Necropolis usually pops up as one of the top suggestions, along with older classics like The Haunting and Edge of Darkness. But is being trapped in a dusty old tomb a great starter experience? Does the Necropolis bring the mystery, chills, and Lovecraftian weirdness that showcases the best of Call of Cthulhu? Well, grab your lantern and shovel and get ready for some serious spoilers, because not only am I going to give you a full review of the Necropolis, I'm going to give you keepers some tips and tricks on how to run this one like a pro. The Necropolis is written by Lee Carr, and you can find it in Gateways to Terror, a supplement that features 3 short starter adventures for Call of Cthulhu. The entire adventure is 18 pages, which includes lots of GM advice, pre-generated characters, and maps, and can easily be run in a single short session, usually just an hour or 2. The adventure is set in 1920s Egypt, the time period where there was a huge frenzy of excitement about uncovering new tombs in the Valley of Kings. Well, a new tomb has just been discovered, and the investigators have been hired to be one of the very first ones to explore it. The adventure jumps right into the action with the PCs just having taken their first steps into that dark tomb. But moments after entering, the tomb's stone door slams shut, trapping the players inside. And in a nice twist, the PCs hear their expedition workers snickering behind that door. This was intentional sabotage. Here we go, boys! Adventure! Wait! We're paying them! What are they doing? The adventure does ask for the PCs to make listen rolls to hear the snickering behind the door, but just let your players hear it. It plays into the dread a little bit better to know that this was intentional. Because the Necropolis is meant to be a very short, tight adventure, I like to emphasize that the PCs are going to quickly run out of oxygen in this tomb. The more the players feel that urgency and pressure, the better this adventure is going to run. I've even used an hourglass once, like slamming it down on the table once the investigators are trapped, just to remind the players that suffocation is imminent. And it's okay if the hourglass runs out. You don't have to instantly kill the players. You can remind the players that they're in their final moments and they better hurry and set a second timer. The point is, make it feel urgent that the players have to find an escape from this tomb. The tomb is really small. There's only a few rooms to explore, and there's nothing really critical for the investigators to find in each room. There's lots of treasures and artifacts and statues scattered around the tomb, and the whole thing does feel very atmospheric. I also make sure to describe how each of these rooms is very cluttered, so that later on in the adventure, when the big bad makes its appearance, the players will kind of think that maybe there's a few places they could hide inside this tomb. The biggest discovery to be found is the dead body of a German archaeologist who has a journal with him that gives some more history to the tomb, along with a very important single stick of dynamite. Many of the rooms are covered in hieroglyphics, which can be translated to tell more of the story of the tomb. You see, the tomb was built way back when in the era of the Black Pharaoh, an avatar of the elder god Nyarlathotep, and the tomb houses one of its unnatural minions, a mummified abomination that's sort of a cross between a man and a werewolf. Because the story of the tomb is told through these hieroglyphics, it is a little bit unfortunate that only one of the pre-generated characters can actually translate them. But because the story of the Black Pharaoh and this tomb is so critical to creating a spooky atmosphere in this adventure and really bringing in those Lovecraftian vibes, I strongly recommend that you give the other players a shot at translating hieroglyphics. Call of Cthulhu is weird in that someone completely fluent in a language still has a reasonable chance to fail to understand that language because of the way the skill rolls work. And what's wrong with that? The real terror of Call of Cthulhu is failing all your language rolls to find the clues at just the right time. And I don't love this mechanic, but you can get around it without house ruling. What I do is I just give the players a book that they can use to slowly translate hieroglyphics in case the linguist isn't around. And that effectively gives each player, say, a 25% chance in the hieroglyphics skill. I've even made a little prop for this so the players can hand that book back and forth. It doesn't actually help them translate the hieroglyphics like in real life, but what it does is whoever's holding on to that book is the one that gets the 25% chance. And this is helpful because in case the PC is split up or the linguist dies or isn't picked as a character, at least someone else has a chance of understanding the backstory of the tomb. There's surprisingly nothing really dangerous in the tomb, at least until that mummy werewolf shows up in the last act. If you plan to run this as a slightly longer session, like maybe 2 hours, I recommend adding some danger early on in the tomb just to keep the players on their toes and give them a challenge beyond just translating hieroglyphics and studying murals. There's a few items in the tomb, like there's some locked chests or that dead German's backpack, where you can easily insert a venomous viper that can suddenly lunge out at the players and force them to scramble and get a little nervous. Give the soldier pre-generated character something to do as well. Or if you want to play into the Lovecraftian weirdness a little bit more, you can give that serpent 2 heads or non-Euclidean eyes. A non-Euclidean snake? Well, now it just sounds like you're throwing words together. Could you please hurry and find me a way out? Oh, I've also added in a swarm of flesh-eating scarabs that emerge from time to time, every 30 minutes or so, to sweep through the tomb and clean the meat off the bones of whoever's fallen, or chase the PCs into a specific room. Then what you can do is you can describe that dead German as this bone white skeleton, which even though he hasn't been dead that long, only a few years, the PCs, especially the ones with medical skills, will find very suspect, and that'll again play up the danger in the atmosphere a little bit more. So then you can surprise the players with scuttling from behind the walls, and suddenly there's a swarm just kind of sweeping through and chasing the players everywhere and adding panic. After the players have explored the tomb, just maybe an hour or so into the adventure, their presence awakens the abomination, the adventure's big bad. This mummy werewolf hybrid is just a total beast. He's intelligent and powerful, and he's easily able to kill a PC in a single swipe of his claws. Running this last part of the adventure is tricky. You have a very powerful bad guy inside a very tight, small tomb. The PCs basically have 2 options once he emerges. They can either try to kill him right away, or they can hide from him and hope for the best. Now, many players I found will go for the violent option because hiding in the tomb kind of feels ludicrous in such a tight space. The biggest room in this tomb is 20 feet across, the size of a small car garage. So even if it's cluttered and you describe it that way, like I suggested, players just won't naturally think that they can hide in that kind of setting. Ah, a hiding place! Shh. In fact, I've found with players new to Call of Cthulhu, maybe they've come from other game systems like Dungeons and Dragons, or they're new to role-playing altogether, players seldom think to kind of run and hide when the monster appears. In fact, the last time I ran this game, I was playing with a player new to Call of Cthulhu. He'd played lots of other RPGs, and he was playing the soldier character. And so when the abomination started to emerge from its chamber, he sprang into action. He positioned himself behind some cover, kind of hid, and blazed away at the monster as it appeared with his gun. He also had found that single stick of dynamite, so he chucked the dynamite at the abomination. He rolled actually pretty well, and he killed the abomination dead. But if he hadn't, then he would have definitely been killed by this abomination. It's that tough, along with most of the other members of the party. That moment when the creature emerges is just very binary, I've found. If this happens and the abomination is just killed dead too early, I suggest what you do is you add an ability to the monster so that when he goes down by normal gunfire, he slowly starts to regenerate. Like the players will see his body stitching itself back together, and that way they'll realize that they have to find a more permanent method of killing this beast, which you can find later in the tomb, and I'll talk about that in a second. Now, if the players do run from the abomination right away, the GM will have a little bit more flexibility and can use the monster in a sort of cat and mouse game. In this case, I like to describe the abomination as a little bit blind. He fumbles and feels himself around in the tomb. This makes the players more likely to think about hiding from the thing. And I also play him with a little bit more intelligence than he's written as. Like when he emerges, he first runs right to the exit door of the tomb and starts to lift up that stone slab to escape. But then he smells the PCs in the tomb, closes the door, and then starts to hunt after them, forcing them to hide among the debris and go room from room. I find that this actually partially blind, intelligent, and cruel abomination is just a more interesting take than the one described in the book, and the GM can have a more fun playing him in a way that really suits the tight layout of this environment. If the players survive the first contact with the abomination, they can explore the area where he emerged from, the final few rooms of the tomb. And here they'll find the abomination's toppled sarcophagus and several canopic jars, one of which contains the abomination's still beating heart. And if you destroy the heart, the abomination dies. So you can see here that surviving this adventure is really hard. The only way to escape from the tomb is either by the abomination lifting the door and following him out, or using that single stick of dynamite to blow the exit door open. So the whole adventure really comes down to how the players use that stick of dynamite. If they use it to kill the abomination, which most players will think about, they've now trapped themselves in the tomb forever. And if they don't use it, well, it's unlikely they'll actually be able to survive that abomination unless you make some serious changes to him like I described. Another fix to this dilemma is to tweak the entrance to the tomb. The abomination wants to escape, but he's too weak to open the door. After all, this tomb was designed to keep him trapped, I imagine, so it doesn't make sense he can just wake up and walk to the door, lift it, and get out. And don't forget that there's those nefarious workers outside the tomb, the ones that trap the PCs inside. I mean, it's obvious that they're cultists and probably knew what was inside the tomb, and they're interested in using the PC's deaths to awaken the abomination and set it free. So perhaps after a while of being stuck inside the tomb and the workers are listening and hear silence after some roars and chaos, they'll actually start to open the tomb up again to release the abomination, which then gives the players a chance to make a run for it or maybe fight their way out, even if they've killed the abomination. This adds a third way for the players to escape the tomb, which again, I find is good just to give the players a little bit more agency in case they just don't think about using that stick of dynamite in the right way. And if the players escape the tomb intact, well, they've finished the Necropolis. So what do I think of this adventure? First off, I'll say right away that this is an adventure designed for new players. Like not just new Call of Cthulhu players, but players who have maybe never tried an RPG before. It's very short, it can easily be played in an hour or two, has a single antagonist, and a very constrained environment. So if you're going to run this one, just keep in mind that simplicity was clearly one of the design goals for this adventure, and keep that in mind as you hear some of my critiques. But I do think ultimately this adventure is a mixed bag. I like how focused it is. I like how it has an authentic, creepy atmosphere and is simple enough that almost anybody can play it and have a good time. But the adventure is so constrained, it feels more like a demo of a game than a game itself. It's missing so many qualities that people love about Call of Cthulhu. There's no mystery, there's no interaction with NPCs, and really no weirdness. It feels very much like a generic horror movie, and as a result, you could take the Necropolis and you could run the exact scenario in Dungeons and Dragons or the Alien RPG with barely any changes, and nobody would notice. And to me, that's a disappointment when an adventure can be pulled out of its setting and just inserted somewhere else and still feel like it belongs. I feel like that's a missed opportunity here. So really, I think unless you're looking for a very, very short adventure for brand new role players, I think there's better starter adventures for Call of Cthulhu. Adventures like The Lightless Beacon, Edge of Darkness, or The Derelict are all wonderful adventures and give your players more agency, have more of a Lovecraftian vibe to them, and they're easier to GM because you don't have that problem of how to run a single powerful foe in a very tight environment, and you also don't have to think as much about how to avoid an anticlimactic TPK too early in the adventure. Well, I hope that review was helpful, and if you've played or run the Necropolis, I'd love to know what your thoughts were. How did it work for you? Did you play it with new players or experienced players? Did they have a good time? Did they survive the abomination? Let me know in the comments below. And if you want to see more reviews like this one, don't forget to like and subscribe to this channel. If you don't, then I'm going to release that abomination at your house. I know how to do that. Until next time, I'm JC. And just remember, if one of your players uses a stick of dynamite stupidly, sometimes it's just fine to leave them trapped forever in an Egyptian tomb.
Wait, are you talking about me? I have a perfectly good plan for the stick of dynamite.